Yeah. All right. So let's get this started here. This is our Marketing 4417 research podcast with Spencer Chasson here and Avery. You can say hi.
Avery Fry over here. How you doing?
Oh, fantastic. Just fantastic. And basically what we're going to do, we're just going to give a little brief introduction to what's going to go on here. And then we're going to go over each of the interviews and kind of give a brief summary and then go over their questions that they've asked, as well as some points that we could give for their individual businesses. And then we're kind of going to have a brief conclusion after that as well. So I guess we can jump right in here and start with our first interview, which was Ross Garbarino. He is a State Farm agent here in town in Jefferson Parish. I mean, down Jefferson, the street Jefferson. And he had a very good interview to start. He was the first one that we did, and he kind of went over some of the stuff that he does within, Facebook, and he does a lot of, word of mouth and, that kind of, I guess, good old fashioned marketing. What did you think about that interview, Avery?
Thought it was really interesting as always. Ross is a great guy. He is a State Farm agent and he's pretty young in that regard. But he's super knowledgeable and continues to aspire for success. I thought it was interesting. He'd rather focus on marketing for people who aren't constantly being bombarded. Leads is a huge thing in sales in terms of insurance. And those people are constantly bombarded all the time. Like he mentioned in our interview, me and you both kind of stuck our toe in that pool a little bit. I currently have an internship with State Farm that Ross helped me out with, so I'm really appreciative of that. But like he said, though, he wants to market to people who aren't constantly being bombarded, like those people who are considered leads are. And this can be done by receiving referrals. Partnerships with smaller companies have led to more referrals as well. So that's something he really wants to hit. And I know in my own experience, that's something that is hugely important. You don't want to be the person who is constantly being called, nor do you want to call that person. It's not a fun experience. It never really goes over too well. It's like, oh man, you're the eighth person in a week. So I think that's a good endeavor by him in terms of marketing.
Yeah, I definitely do. Y'all do do y'all buy leads? Like I know he had mentioned that how he
Yeah,
buys
we
like warm
do.
leads.
We do. My boss, Mike Lular, he purchases leads, and also there's leads that are given out by the company as well, but they're company wide. So it's like if you get those, you have to hit them ASAP. I'm sure you know.
Mhm.
And but yeah, Michael buys some, and we utilize those quite a bit. In my position, it's kind of changing right now to where I am starting to utilize leads and then taking more inbound calls. Um, because I've as of recently just been doing the telemarketing kind of cold calling side of things, which is a beast in its own right. So, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I know like it's cool with Ross too. He did a lot of like during the beginning of the coronavirus, he did a lot of partnerships with businesses such as like Pot and Paddle, where he would do like the first 10 people or 20 people to comment like for like their favorite teacher gets to
Mm,
have a free plate lunch with the Pot and Paddle, which is like their next door neighbor. They give him a free jambalaya at lunch. So like, he did a lot of that stuff, which I think worked out really well and helped boost his kind of image. He also did do a billboard by his office, and he did do he has some benches that he does mention as well that he
right.
has his face on. And then he also mentioned he doesn't currently do any like paid advertising within Facebook or Instagram. I don't know. I'm not sure if they have an Instagram or not. If they do, I don't think it's very active. So I think that was, that kind of goes into um, the next part where it was kind of like, one of his questions was like, what is missing within his business? And I think that's like, for me, that would be something to where he can get into all the different social media platforms, like get really involved with Instagram,
Mhm.
even potentially Twitter, LinkedIn. I know he mentioned he could do more with LinkedIn and Facebook. And then on top of that, he could probably do within his like company's guidelines, like he mentioned, there's a lot of red tape that he has to get through to post stuff. But like if he can get into some of those paid advertising platforms with Facebook, such as doing some type of, you know, targeting if he wants to target a certain like just around his office or around that, and, you know, really try to bring in some new customers through Facebook. I think that's a market that he hasn't really touched in too much.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to unpack right there. You brought up some good points. First off is definitely with the social media. I completely agree. One idea I thought would be interesting because, you know, it's interesting for us on this side because having interviewed 5 people, giving their inputs. One thing we're going to hit on billboards a lot today. I think we're going to talk about billboards a lot, which is pretty interesting. Everybody has their own experience with billboards. And when we get into Jay Robichaux's interview, that's some great insight as well. But branching off the social media point, I think there's some great ways that Ross can utilize that at State Farm. And I think that, you know, there's some hurdles that they have to jump through. But I think if the message is clear and it helps the business, then it should be fine to pursue. And the idea I had was actually generated from something that Jay Robichaux said in his interview, of basically utilizing. Now, you know me, I'm not a huge proponent of it, but TikTok, right? Just because it's a quick video, right? To show people post on there all the time, do DIY videos and stuff like that. What if there's a DIY video for a life insurance policy, right? Maybe it's not as interesting as someone, you know, making a, you know, cabin in the woods, but at the same point in time, it's brief and it kind of hits that audience that, you know, Ross says, how does he hit this generation of young people? How do I, you know, teach them about insurance and get them to know how important these policies are? Well, that may be a way to do it. Another area that he said, you know, I recently have been doing a project on, you know, marketing sales concepts. So I think some of that is applicable here. And in my experience at, you know, State Farm and stuff in my limited time, I found that outbound sales and generating new opportunities by calling customers is hugely important as well. And that's another way to kind of get your name out. And it coincides with what he said before in terms of referrals, and you don't want to bombard those people. So I think that is another area that he can look at as well. Maybe obviously they do outbound sales calls and look at those prospects. But that's something that I know my office is trying to focus on more as. So, you know, just putting that out there, that is something that I think is interesting. But I also want to bring up another point that I thought was really interesting in Ross's interview, which is the Google review process. That's so smart. I think that's genius just because everybody Googles everything now. Like, you know, where you're going, you know, and locations and stuff like that. And it's like literally half a scroll down the screen, you see what everybody thinks about this place. It's huge. It's huge to basically solidify your reputation and also to basically show people what you're about. And it's a first impression, and it's accessible to everyone. So that's huge. And I think that's something that's really smart. And I think that's also something that's come up in David's interview as well. So yeah, I think we're going to talk more about that. But I think that Google review process to increase their search optimization is huge, and that's critical. And I think that's something that Ross has done very well.
Yeah, no, and that's definitely something, you know, you kind of mentioned with like TikTok, and that kind of goes towards his, like you said, his second question, which is like, you know, how do you better market to that new generation of people like us that are graduating?
Yeah.
And I think, you know, the big thing with TikTok, it's like, I think the people are scared to, like, you know, do it. Like, it's kind of a big step. They're nervous. They don't know what to post or what, like,
Right.
really it's just like getting your name out there and just posting about it. Could be a great way just to, you know, at least be in touch with the younger people. And I think another thing they can do to kind of market to the younger people is like doing more informational type stuff, which I know kind of, you know, Jay had mentioned a little bit in the next one, but it's like doing some more videos or like posts where it's like explaining car insurance, explaining each part of it, like kind of going over things like a lot of us don't know or have no idea about, you know, such, you know, like the universal life or, you know, the property and casualty side of things. And I think that could be a way for them to kind of touch in with the younger people who have no idea what insurance is or, you know, and also, of course, like Ross does and almost all these people do is, you know, they also have interns and they employ younger people, and that's a good way as well to make sure that you're still prevalent and still, aware of what's going on in the world. So that's good. That was, Ross's interview went very well. He's a great guy, and I'm glad we were able to get him on here. And I guess that kind of goes into our next interview, which was, Jay Robichaux. Jay is a financial planner and a small business insurance firm, which they're a brokerage, so Coastal Louisiana Insurance. So they have a bunch of different insurances that they can sell from. So they can shop for your insurance quotes, while State Farm you can only sell State Farm products. And he's also a financial advisor with Robichaux Financial, which is under New York Life. And so he had a bunch of, very interesting points to his, which he's a little bit older than Ross. So his kind of aspect of things is he kind of gets the younger guys in his company. He currently has a person who is in charge of all the social media. He's also one of their salesmen, and he does, all their social media posts, all their LinkedIn stuff, because, Jay is more he knows more about the old school way of marketing, which is more word of mouth, talking, sales, that kind of aspect. And it was, I always enjoy talking to him. He was my old boss way back in the day. So what did you think about that, Avery? What did you get out of that interview?
I think this interview was very influential for me. It's one that through transcribing and stuff, I kind of rewinded it a couple of times just, for my own benefit. There are a lot of things that were said that that were both interesting and of importance to me. And I think it's an interesting point you just brought up. He is from the old school way of marketing, and like I said, on this side, it's very interesting talking to all these people because they have come from a variety of different backgrounds. And so for Jay, coming from that old school way, digital marketing is something very interesting, and something that he knows is important to utilize. He mentioned the importance of following and riding trends, staying on top of that and benefiting from it. That's something we're going to talk a lot today, I think, about as well. And I think it's huge in that regard. He mentioned how he utilizes Facebook and Google ads due to the importance of the SEO. And it's become huge level of importance in regard to digital marketing. And as I mentioned earlier with the TikTok, that came from him. That was his idea, and credit to him for once again, I'm not a TikTok guy, and it's interesting how these new forms of social media that serve as entertainment mostly can be used to benefit businesses. Now, the utilization of those things, that's another conversation. That's also something that's super interesting because I think you'll see more of a shift. A point I wanted to make later, but I'll bring up now and unpack it later, is how social media apps kind of evolve over time. Originally, Facebook came out and college students were using it, and when Zuckerberg made it over at Harvard and stuff. And it kind of evolved. I remember I got it as a kid and stuff like that, and people would message on there. But now it's kind of for the older generation. When Instagram rolled out, that's kind of where everybody settled in. And now you have Snapchat, which is a kind of mix with that as well. So you ride the trends with these social media devices. And TikTok is a very unique one because it's video based and it's also hugely popular. So I think the utilizations, as I mentioned earlier, could be pretty beneficial, utilizing platforms in general in digital marketing, because the world is on digital marketing. It's a click away. It's so easy, and it takes a little effort to have people see something if you're able to garner that audience. So I think that's a great point that Jay brought up, and I think that's hugely important. We'll, for me and you coming up in this digital age and stuff, I think that the underlying theme of digital marketing will be regarded in even more higher importance as we progress in our careers.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think there's something too where he kind of mentioned a little bit. So he kind of has the same issue as Ross does in some situations, because on his Robichaux Financial side, he works with New York Life, and so they also have a lot of red tape, and that's also the financial sector. So there's a lot of rules and regulations of what he can and can't post. So he's kind of handcuffed into what a lot of his marketing has to be, okayed by the corporate side. And there's a lot that he has to go through. But then on his coastal Louisiana side, he has, a wide open array of things that he can do. And I think he had mentioned that he does do a little bit of like some Google AdWord type stuff. And like, I think that that's, really something that people need to continue to invest in because he does have, some pretty good Google reviews. And of course, if he continues to get the Google reviews, and then on top of that, paying for some Google AdWords, some more SEO investments, because like, I think the next generation is going to be Googling like, Baton Rouge insurance firms and like, where do I get insurance from? And like, good insurance agents in Baton Rouge and all that kind of stuff. And if you can get those like keywords and SEO there, then he can be, have the advantage for the younger people. And he also doesn't have to worry about the red tape and the type of, rules and regulation that he'd have to go through in order to do that, since he is a independent brokerage firm and doesn't have to worry about at least too much about what the other company has to say or do about it. And then I guess that then kind of goes into his questions where it's like, how do you walk the line between the two businesses and give them both the attention that they need? And it was kind of he's a serial entrepreneur to where he's always thinking of the next thing to do. And his question was like, how do you, kind of give both businesses the attention? And I think that's something like a lot of entrepreneurs are going to face from time to time, because it's kind of hard to balance your time. And I think, at least personally, this isn't like any academic sense, but like personally, it's, you kind of just have to have the right people employed within those businesses to where you can give, you can trust them with the decisions that they need to make. And so you're not constantly micromanaging, to where you can, do the big picture stuff and then let your employees do the smaller stuff and let them run the day-to-day business. So you have time to give the other business the attention it needs, or a new business the attention that it needs. And so I think it has a lot of like trust that like goes in there,
I agree. And branching off that point, that's something that Jay mentioned as well. And I think that's he mentioned how in the past, he would try to learn these new things and utilize these new sets of skills to, find a means to an end, so to speak. But, in recent light for him, he's found people that are better at these things, that know how to do these things, and specifically are knowledgeable about something specific to him that can benefit his business. And I think relying on those people, as you said, is huge to grow his businesses. And it also takes less off his plate, which is good. He needs to focus on the overhead, of course. Balancing, these two businesses, it's very impressive how he's been able to do it. And I honestly think he's been doing a great job. From what I've seen, I think that in review of my interview with Jay, I think it, like I said, he has been doing a good job, and it's somewhat of a balancing act. And you always wonder if all the eyes that are on your business as you can get, that's something that will always itch at you. But once again, social media is a great tool to keep that coming. And I know in some ways he's limited in that with one of his businesses, but at the same point in time, and I don't know what those hurdles are like that he may have to jump over. If they're super extensive, then I totally get it. But I think that to not engage in digital marketing, I mean, that's a bunch of eyes right there, and a couple clicks, likes, and shares would help exponentially. So I think in that regard, in like the thought process of like, man, is there anything else I can do? Like, am I missing something to get more people to look at my business, to get more attention here? And I would find ease in digital marketing and pursuing that endeavor personally.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And like he has done a very good job with the digital marketing side of it. And I know that's something that he's going to be growing constantly. And then like he is given a very unique opportunity. And one of the reasons why he began Coastal Louisiana Insurance, because he has the ability to cross market between those two businesses. And that kind of draws us to his next question, where it's like, what's the best way to kind of cross market? How do you, use one business to kind of leverage the other? And it's like, again, he has to watch, and I know, like, you can't, exactly use all of his New York Life clients to, and then call them up about coastal Louisiana stuff. But like, he can always, when he's going through quoting people on the insurance side and be like, hey, like, just like Avery knows, there's a few ways you can kind of cross sell and be like, well, do you have life insurance for this, or do you have life insurance for that? And he can kind of use that to kind of bring them onto the New York Life side. And then once they're on the life insurance side, then he can start, asking them about their financial aspects and their financial life, which then brings them to the financial planning side. And I guess, like the best way to do that is just to ask, and that's something that is difficult in sales sometimes. It's like you just can't be afraid to ask them about this, or ask them about how their life's going, what are their plans, what are their financial aspirations, and all that kind of stuff with your customer of either one. And then from there, it's just, the whole cross-selling, which I'm sure that that your boss has probably taught you a lot as well, Avery, about the whole cross-selling and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, bringing up the opportunity to connect the two by having this other resource available. I also think that conversation does a lot for someone like Jay. It establishes credibility for him. His experience in one business elevates his experience in another. And I think in regard to that, teaching people to market better, as he mentioned before, I think another question he had, yeah, how do you teach the serial entrepreneur who maybe is even a good marketer to market better? I think that's a great question. And to hop on that, teaching people to market better is an effort that includes writing trends, as I mentioned before, and continuously being in the loop of those trends. Whenever people flock to something or utilize a specific form of marketing, investigate it, become knowledgeable of that trend to see if it can actually help your business. Flipping back to the cross marketing between multiple businesses, I think that it's definitely something. I personally, I don't know if I have that entrepreneurship mind, because it sounds difficult, obviously, to balance not one but two businesses. Um, but I think the connection between the two, right? One's financial advisory, one's insurance, and Jay is very knowledgeable in both regards, and I think those two skills are very beneficial of each other, and both of those businesses, as you said, can kind of ride off each other in terms of the opportunities he can create. And though he may be limited in some capacity, I think you brought up a great point of just being able to kind of sprinkle that in conversation whenever possible, and yeah, establish credibility and help as many people as you can.
Yeah, and I think he does do, a very good job of that already. I know, he's kind of more like, what else could he do? Like, I just think he just has to, continue trying to ask as much of his existing customers already about it. And I think a lot of people will find value in him in being like their one-stop shop of getting all of their financial and insurance needs coming from him. So like they can just go to one person for all their finances, which I think is something that he can
Right.
market towards to new customers. And then the whole, like how you teach an entrepreneur, to market better per se. And I think it's something that I already know that he already does, but it's constantly reading, constantly looking for the, like you said, the new trends, just, constantly trying to better yourself as a marketer, because there is, it's literally ever changing. I know later on, David mentions, and that's kind of one of his questions too, is like, like why does social media kind of change so much? Why does Facebook change its algorithms? And it's so hard to kind of stay on top of that. And that's just unfortunately one of the beasts of marketing, is that it's just such a constantly evolving space that just you need to continue to research and read up on everything that is going on. And that's one of the reasons why marketing is so difficult, is that it's just so, constantly changing.
Yeah, I agree. It's a dynamic world for sure, and I think that's one of like the pains of it, that it's so, when you're in all the time, like, throughout people's lives and in their careers and stuff, people think, oh, I figured, I got to this level, I have it figured out, I cracked the code. Well, constantly, you're kind of checked, so to speak, and you realize that, oh man, things are flipped on their head, I have to figure it out again. And I think marketing is just that in a nutshell, just a constant cycle of learning, relearning. You got to figure it out, and then this other thing, this other trend catches, or the algorithms change, and you have to adapt. It's just one big cyclical nature of adapting and learning and relearning.
Yeah, yeah, and that's what made his whole interview and the last two, Ross and Jay. They're both kind of similar, but they also have their own differences because of their age differences as well as their differences in their business. And then like this next guy, Nick Foster, his business is completely different than the previous two, which makes it a really interesting interview as well. So Nick is a political consultant basically. So he owns a consulting firm that specializes in political campaigns and kind of like the whole aspect of that. They do strategy, they do the whole graphics behind it as well. So they have their own internal people that deal with the creative side, and they have people that deal with the strategy. And so he has been able to work on quite a few campaigns, and he is our age as well. He's a graduating senior, so it was really great to talk to him, and he had a very interesting aspect and asked a lot of different questions than what we heard from all the other people, because he has such a different business than the others. It's really cool to see like the difference, but also the similarities between campaigning and marketing. They almost go hand in hand with the fact that you're trying to spread your name and try to tell people that your brand is better than another brand, similar to what businesses compete as. So it is similar in that aspect, but it's very different in how it is done. And he also mentioned too, again with the red tape, and he has to deal with a lot of different rules from not only from the state, but also federal laws and regulations that come with politics in general and the funding of it. There's a lot of legal stuff as well. But for him, it's the way that they kind of get new customers and market his business itself is a lot of word of mouth, which is politics in general. And I think that is something that's also said with David as well. It's a lot of word of mouth stuff. But I also think that there could be some value in really trying to boost their digital and their Google SEO and all that kind of stuff to really get their business to the next level. But they've done a great job so far with all of that.
Yeah, like you said, he's closer to age to as we are, and I think that was really interesting to me. I remember I never met Nick, and you knew him prior, and I remember asking you like, oh yeah, like how long has this guy been doing this for? He's like, dude, he's graduating senior like us. I was like, oh my god, like I had no idea. He seems really intelligent and really knowledgeable in his field. And he mentioned how running a marketing campaign, or a campaign in general, like you said, it's close to marketing. For Foster Global Strategies, it's a little different because of his target group is a specific age group, being politicians. So he's kind of got to focus on that age group and what they kind of utilize and participate in. One of these examples is a newsletter that he uses to spread the name of his business. And as you mentioned, word of mouth is really big as well in terms of advertisement. And I wanted to bring up the billboard here for the first time, because he mentioned they were toying with the idea of displaying a billboard. And since we just went over Jay's interview, Jay mentioned that his experience with the billboard was basically, he didn't get a lot of business from it, but he got recognized. He got recognition for it. And that recognition was worth it. It made people talk. It made people, got more eyes, so to speak, on the business. So I think, and David mentions it as well when we go over his interview. A billboard seems to be, in some people's mind, this thing of being like, oh man, if I buy a billboard, it's going to give me more sales, and it's going to give me more business, and it's going to maximize all these things for me and overall create this growth. It may not benefit you like that, but it will work, the same way digital marketing works in terms of getting more eyes on you, getting more recognition, getting people to see what you're doing, just people even being aware, like, oh yeah, you saw that, but yeah, I did see that billboard, I did see it, over on so and so street. That in itself is power, and you never know what opportunity that will lead to. So I think that for that billboard idea, him toying with that, uh, I would tell Nick to go for it, because we've heard that it's worked before. Um, and you just kind of have to have the right mindset and expect the right thing from it. And I think he'll be more than happy, because he mentioned on the return on investment for digital marketing, more specifically Snapchat, and it didn't really pan out well for him. But I think in this endeavor, it will pan out just fine. Billboards, they seem to do the trick.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially if you put it, downtown Baton Rouge, or go to capitals, depending on where and what states he wants to go to, just to get his name recognition, or even if it just someone can just Google, who he is or what, that's at least something. And then like for them, like they are such a new, company. And like I personally, I'm sure you don't know as well, like how people find political consultants. Do they Google political consultants in Baton Rouge? Probably
Right.
not. If I had to guess, I'm sure they ask people who won elections, who did you use, and like, what company did you use? And
Very
so
true.
like unfortunately with them, like of course digital marketing and the billboards and stuff like that will help out with at least their name recognition, which I know from past experiences that they do a very good job with their campaigns. But a lot of time it's just, they ask like winning campaigns, who won, and like, or they ask like, who'd you use in order to win? Did you like them? Did you not like them? So again, that's kind of just a portfolio of information. And then he did mention to it, they're making a new website right now. So I'm sure they're gonna have a portfolio of their past campaigns, and kind of like just their portfolio of the creative ideas that they've done. And then from there, they could potentially do a few SEO, Google AdWord type stuff, just so they can get higher on the search engine. And then like that kind of, it's kind of crazy, because like his question was, much different than the other questions, where he kind of talks about, within politics, the increase in the use of bots. He uses, Russian bots as an example. It's like, how do you counter that with digital marketing, right? And it's like, that's a question, probably the not even $1 million, probably the $100 million question, because it's going to be something that we're going to see more of with the increase of the use of social media in politics, and the fact that it is so easy to make accounts, and so easy to just tweet out, or just to post stuff, and you can see that with the increase in burner accounts that even celebrities are using. And that's something that these bot farms ultimately are what they're called, and they are just out there constantly liking or retweeting or posting stuff about a certain candidate. And frankly, I mean, I'm not entirely sure, how the best way to counter that. I mean, it also depends on the election, right? So like if it's a local Baton Rouge election, I can't imagine that, bots would have a huge impact on that. But I guess in the future it is possible. And I think the best way to do that, to kind of counter that, would be, to try to have the most human interaction as possible. If you try to hit, uh, you know, local small businesses, local areas where a lot of people are, you know, uh, are just talking, or a lot of like malls, stuff like that, where people are, in contact with other people. If you can get them talking about your person, or, try to be as much person to person as possible, which isn't really digital marketing. That's more the traditional side. And then like within digital marketing, I guess, you could just try to be as personal as possible, because I think a lot of those bots are just not personal with, they just kind of tweet out keywords and kind of just post the big picture stuff. And if you can try to humanize, uh, your post and your strategies as much as possible, I think that's something that people are going to start to appreciate more, as there's more and more robots and more bots that are used in these campaigns. And that's something that's going to be seen within marketing as well, because there's a lot of Instagram companies who buy people to like their posts in order to increase their likes. So that's something that's been going on within the digital marketing field, not just the political field as well. And again, it really depends on, how personal these companies are getting. That's why, as a trend, you're seeing a lot more companies that are trying to go back into the family life and try to be more personal with their advertisements, because people want to be more personal in their businesses.
Yeah, I totally agree. And It's interesting he brought up this problem because we've seen it a lot in the past, in the past year, and some change. But yeah, the Russian bot problem is real, and it affects businesses and individuals. And I think the wishful thinking is that legal legislation would ban these bots, and there'd be a system in place to basically sweep and detect these bots so they can be eliminated. But obviously, I mean, that would be near impossible. I think like there's just so many, uh, there's so many different types, and it's just a huge overarching issue. And I think the big way, uh, how I kind of tackled this kind of question is in terms of dealing with the bots is kind of knowing how to identify them. Um, and that could be a key in taking care of them, I think, and kind of venting through, sifting through this bot kind of polluted um, world that we kind of live in at times. And this can be done by noticing hyperactivity, seeing the frequency of URL shortening use, um, and unlikely popularity for small accounts with a large number of likes. And some of these are easier than others. The URL shortening use, you have to do extensive background check basically to see if they're utilizing that. But hyperactivity and unlikely popularity are pretty easy to identify. You see an account with 50 followers, but the post is like 5,000 likes. Um, that's a bot. like, uh, but yeah, I think like noticing those things, um, they're a good way to basically filter. And I think there's got to be something in place to report them and stuff like that. On the other end, like on Nick's end of identifying, I totally agree with your point. Stay the course and have those more humanized interactions. I think for Nick in this political campaign, that's beneficial to him. Like obviously, bots are can be a smear campaign that are not beneficial at all. Uh, of course, they're not intended to be, but I think his reliance on word to mouth and his personable interactions, that takes him very far. And thankfully, that I think that this Bob problem could be bigger than it actually is now because of that. It's good that there's more of a human factor because if you think with State Farm, right, for an example, um, it's kind of rare, especially now with COVID, that people come into the office. You don't really see that, so we're all over the phone. You know what I mean? We're over the phone, or people see our advertisements on TV. Jake from State Farm, Drake from State Farm, whatever it is. But with Nick's scenario, yeah, there's more of a human factor there, and I think there has to be, and I think that minimizes this issue because it could be worse. So
Yeah, I agree. I think you bring up a good point of like trying to, spot it. I think that could be something that he does. If his political campaigns are not using bots, then they could make a post or make a advertising or something on TV that says like, well, how do you spot bots?
yeah,
If you do see them, and then they can go through the like, the signs of bot use. And so that they can say, well, hey, look, like we're not using bots, but like here's a way that you can spot it in the future, and like that way, it's kind of a way that you can self-market yourself that we're a human company, not a bot campaign, and then you can inform others on how to spot it. So I think that is a really great point, and I guess that we can kind of move on to our next guy, which is David Gravois. He is so his company itself is almost, I guess, probably you'd say a marketing company. He deals more in the creative side, so he's more of a digital designer. But he did say that he also does some social media stuff. He does the graphics. He's a one man shop as well, so he's by himself, and he's from the Thibodeau area as well. That's how I was able to get in touch with him. But he's been doing a great job. He's been really hitting a lot of the local businesses in Thibodeau. He's done a phenomenal job with it. And I think he also brings some interesting aspects as well, because from his side, he's doing a lot of marketing himself. And so he kind of brings a good angle that we didn't see from the others because he's literally in it. He's kind of in the trenches and doing a lot of that, digital marketing stuff.
Yeah, I thought this interview was very interesting. As you mentioned, David is more of a creative mind than a business oriented mind. And I think that's really interesting for me uh, in terms of how he runs his business. I remember him mentioning how he doesn't do pay per clicks at all. And if if that's something that the customers need or it's beneficial in that regard, it's something he'll source out and bring on people who know what they're doing. But numbers and analytics aren't his thing. I thought that was great. They're not too much my things either, but it's something that exists that I have to, I guess, deal with, especially down the line of my career. But um, yeah, I just like that sentiment that but it would bring people on. Like that's something that Jay said, you get the right people to and you outsource for those people who have the knowledge and those certain things. Also his marketing strategies, word of mouth is huge. As you mentioned, he's from Thibodeau, like you. It's a smaller town, and I think that's beneficial to him. That it is a smaller town, and word of mouth it spreads pretty quick. And he also mentioned a strong Google review presence. He tries to up the ante on that as well, just like Ross. I think that's important. That's something I recently been working on a separate project for a different class, as I mentioned before, sales concepts. And I mentioned this in my my final report, basically, of the importance of these Google review present, like the presence of Google review. Sorry, I got caught on my words there. But it's it's largely important. Like I said, it establishes credibility before, and also it helps customers see the value in David's business. It shows that he's helped a plethora of people, and that he can help you too. For prospective customers, that's huge. That's eye opening. That I think that's one of the most important things he does. Is holding that strong presence for Google review and the SEO. He's able to utilize that as well. Um, and he also, in terms of digital marketing, he's on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. Um, I believe he mentioned not having a huge digital marketing presence, and you know, posts here and there for his specific business, his graphic business. I think that it doesn't really need a huge presence, just as long as he's keeping up with it on an average level. But I think being in Thibodeau with word of mouth, his Google review presence, and I think that's enough in his specific situation. But also, as we said before, I'm not going to contradict myself. Digital marketing is important. If he were to increase efforts in that, it would only help him. So,
Yeah, I agree. And I think to touch on the whole Google review part, again, it kind of helps humanize his business and the fact that, like, he's helping local customers. They can see and they probably recognize the names that are on his Google reviews. And that's another aspect as well. It not only helps his, Google search, it also helps out, just for people to be like, oh, yeah, like, he has good reviews. He must be reputable. And it's also humanizing to think like, oh, these are all local people as well. And then, like, with regards to his business itself, I think it's going to depend on where he wants his business to go. So I know it's still it's still fairly new for him, but if he plans on, kind of starting to like branch out into other cities in Louisiana or go out, statewide, then he's probably going to have to start doing some more digital marketing efforts to where like he can hit those cities where he doesn't exactly know people and doesn't know, at least that first initial, hit. And then I think another thing that he mentions a lot of is that guerrilla marketing strategy that he does. He's really big into, just going full out, where he mentions, which I'm going to also send in the like picture when I submit this project, but he sent us the picture of his sign during the like campaign season where he kind of just put his name and like, just a little bit about him, like what he is type deal. And like people were like calling him up saying like, hey, like, what are you running for and all that kind of stuff. When like in reality, he was just trying to get his business out, which that
Right.
was a cheap way. He said it was $150 to buy some signs, and he just went out and just put them out in people's yards or in busy corners. And that's just, a way that it could be done with almost all of these businesses here, where it's like, just little things like that, where it's not super expensive billboards, but it is a way for you to get your name across. He mentions the whole, $100 bill situation, where it's like his like business card, but it looks like $100 bill. It dropped on the ground. He's going to drop those around for, the local Thibodeau festivals. And again, that's all like great ways of like tangible traditional marketing efforts that are still, keeping up with the trends. And if he wants to start expanding his business, he's either going to have to, start traveling a lot more and going to these other cities and doing that, or, hiring individuals to do that, or he's going to have to increase his digital marketing efforts in order to increase his branding and his name across the state.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's interesting with him how he mentioned the branding with those signs and stuff. It's a point. How he described it. Now I understood it. It's a way to get from point A to point B. It's a way to get your name out there, get eyes on you, that recognition that we talked about. And he also said the smaller amount the information, the better. And I love that because if someone can look at your sign and in 2 seconds know, what you're doing, what you're about, why this sign is there, then that's a win, right? Someone being able to get the point in 2 seconds is huge. No one wants to read extensively. It's hard enough to hold people's attention as it is. So I think that's hugely important. And that's a sentiment that I'll remember. The smaller amount of the information, the better. And
Yeah,
addition to that, yeah, go ahead.
just like real quick, I also want to say too, within his like social media, posting and stuff like that, I am friends with him on LinkedIn and stuff. He does do a very good job of posting his past work, and I think that's something that he could really, if he wanted to sponsor some ads or wanted to, use that, he can, be like, hey, like I made this website, or I made this logo, I made this, this screen, like this, like, menu for this restaurant. If he can use that and then kind of, really start blasting that out to across the state, and the people who like his work, like, oh, I like that. Like, what's your prices? What's all that? That's another way to kind of boost his individual branding as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before I get and mention the $100 business card, I think that's a great idea too. And a unique thing about the time we live in now is that you're able to contact and work with people in different cities and states across the country because of the technology that we have today. And those digital marketing campaigns can help them out on that. But in that regard, say he's in Thibodeau and he's trying to grow the business. Well, a great way to do that, maybe he has some contacts, obviously this is just an example, has some contacts in Texas and stuff, or, knows some people, does some work from them, and that kind of spreads some word of mouth. He's able to advertise over there a bit in a physical fashion with some signs and stuff like that. And he's able to grow over there. I think that's a great avenue, a possible avenue that can occur. Yeah, like I said, we're not limited by location anymore. You're able to kind of get outside of your town with the technology we have, and digital marketing is a great way to do that. But the $100 business card, I love that. That was awesome. When he showed it, I was like, "What is that?" And he opened it up. Like, I was so interested. But that's kind of twofold, right? That's kind of it's a lure a little bit. People are like, "Oh my God, $100, right? Pick it up." Realize it's a card, but it also kind of displays his talent a little bit. It establishes credibility a little bit. So someone makes sense, like, wow, in my mindset, if I were to pick that up, this worked. Like, you know what I mean? It got me. It worked. Now I have this guy's information. I think that's a great opportunity. I thought it was really funny how he said, it's either going to piss people off or, I'm going to get some business. Yeah. Like, but I think that's awesome. It's a great idea. And yeah, I think he brought up some interesting points. I did enjoy his interview quite a bit.
Yeah, it was good. And I think too, if that's, I know he mentioned too how busy he currently is, and if he plans on kind of expanding his business out and try to really grow it, he's either going to have to hire someone. I know he said, he doesn't like people to like rely on him for their livelihood, which I completely understand. So then, like, they kind of like teach us too here. It's like, well, if that's the case, then it might be time to start raising your prices, to try to handle that demand, and start, to where you can take on the same amount of business that you're doing now, but you might have bigger clients. You might, be making more money off of it, while also continuing to do what you like and love. Or, if he likes where he's at now, then that's totally fine as well. That's the beauty of working for yourself, is like you can control how much work you want to do and how much free time you have. And then, that his like questions, I guess, kind of like, dive deeper into the whole digital marketing aspect, where he asked, like, why did social media platforms change their techniques for targeting so much, and like why, how is a marketer supposed to understand like which platform to use for which, like for, for whatever business it's in. And I think that gets like super difficult, because it's like we had mentioned earlier, it's such a diverse and changing market, and it's really hard for for like I almost feel that like every business has a different platform that it would do well at, but that could change in a week or two. Like for instance, Apple is releasing their new update next week, and like within that update, they're gonna make you opt into, like, so whenever you open up Facebook for the first time, you're gonna have to opt in to them sharing your, your basically like your, like your history and all your personal type of like privacy type stuff. Whereas recently it was just shared with Facebook, but now you have to opt into it. And so like something like that, that's gonna have huge implications with marketing, because you may potentially not be able to target people exactly as you'd like, through this Apple update. And they're expecting a lot of companies' stock to fall because of that, because they're not going to be able to make as much money, because they're not going to be able to target as much. And like things like that are changing all the time. And just like he mentions with Google, like sometimes Google is better for a certain business or a certain time, you can target better on it. But then like at the same time, that might change next month, and then it's going to move to TikTok. But like, currently we had learned recently that like TikTok is super expensive right now to market, because it is so, it's so popular and you can get so many
Mm.
impressions. So you can spend up to $500,000 marketing on a TikTok.
Yeah.
Whereas like you can go on Facebook and target exactly you want for, a couple $100 per se. So I mean, like things are constantly changing. I think that's the unfortunate nature of social media. But that definitely could be a interesting, research type question, to where it's like, when should you use a certain social media platform, or like what's like the usual time cycle of like social media platforms within a certain marketing niche. It's like sometimes, service companies might be better to go on Google, but then in the future they might move to Facebook, or, that whole sort of constant changing of like societal norms within marketing.
Yeah. I think in terms of how or when should a marketer use certain platform to target in relation to another platform? I thought that was a great question. And I think some platforms they appeal to certain groups of people more than others. As we mentioned a bunch, you mentioned TikTok. That's the younger crowd, of course. Facebook's dominated by the older generation. Instagram and Snapchat is a mix of each. And I think it's based on that target age demographic that you're trying to hit, right? In Ross's scenario, how does he get, you know, guys like us in our early 20s to learn about insurance that are about to enter the real world and stuff like that. Um, how does Nick get to politicians who are usually middle aged? Um, I think therein lies your answer of what age group are you targeting, and then what social media platform is dominated by that age group. Um, in Nick's predicament, it would be Facebook, I think, and in Ross's predicament, it would be probably TikTok. He can get away with Instagram and Snapchat, but I mean, TikTok it would be huge for that. I think that idea I had before about him kind of making those videos about life policies, but um, for David, uh, I think he's got kind of like this unique kind of spread here because, you know, there's not a specific age group that's limited to graphing and stuff like that, and kind of get marketing and using those his skill set. So I think utilizing all of these, he would benefit greatly from a TikTok account. I think, like if he would to show some kind of cool process of making a graphic or something like that, or this is the project, and he shows his kind of like blueprint basically, and he kind of gets it done and makes something physical there, and it's something that people can follow, that we've seen in those videos. And of course, I don't know what kind of how extensive things are for David in that regard, but him showing his process, if it's something interesting and like captivating, then people will watch that, and that's interest right there, and that helps his business. So I think that that's something interesting that he can look into, because TikTok is basically just it's just a black hole of let me waste an hour.
Mm-hmm.
So within that, if you come to me and like, man, I just saw this video, this guy just kind of got this idea from this business, and he just printed out this logo and stuff, and it's just this big sign and stuff, and he like put them all over the place, and like it looks great and stuff, and it's the process from him getting the idea to him implementing it and printing it out and mass kind of producing these signs, and there they are, man. Like, what I mean? Like, it's kind of something, and obviously that's just example, but in that regard, that's something that could greatly benefit him, I think.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's definitely something that I could see him getting into as well. Cause like, it's not really that much extra work, like he's doing what he'd be doing anyway, but he's just kind of documenting it. And again, like what I said earlier with like TikTok, I think the biggest problem that people have with it, like they think it's just, like a super, niche thing that's gonna be gone in 6 months. And it's not worth their time, or like they just don't know how to do it, or like they're scared to kind of see, or like they're like scared of what people think, or like they might think that they're immature, not a professional, but like at the end of the day, it's like, if you're here to like make money and you're here to be successful, then like, it doesn't really matter. Like as long as you're getting your name out and you're like trying to, strive for, success, then like, I think it doesn't matter, like whatever way you can do to get that. And that's what you need to do.
100%. I agree. And that's something that that Jay remarked upon. He's not a fan of it, but if it helps his business, he's going to do it. That's the attitude I think you have to have here. There shouldn't be any shame in using apps that are associated with, the younger crowd, or may have or be dominated with content that's a little silly, or just kind of entertainment videos. If it helps your business, you have to utilize those opportunities. Those are few and far between. In addition to that, I don't think, as a business owner, I don't think you should be choosy about what you should be using. If it's gonna help you, let it help you. Just do it. Like, you know what I mean? It'll if it benefits you, the benefits will come. I don't think there should be a worry about the perception of those things. If it's going to help your business, that should be your number one priority. So that's what I think.
Yep, I agree. Like I said, I think if David would, implement those things, even then, like he could continue what he's doing now and be perfectly fine, because, he is doing such a great job. But of course, there's always room for improvement for businesses. But we do obviously, thank David for coming here and talking to us. And then lastly, we have Carly Graff. So she is the business manager from Parish Brewery. And this one was, super interesting to me as well, not only because it's beer, but also because, again, it's an entirely different market than we were talking about beforehand. And so she's been with Parish Brewery for about 4 years, and she's in charge of almost all the like business aspects of it. So she's on top of the current like marketing person who, does all. So she has to almost, oversee all of the different digital marketing and traditional marketing aspects of it. And I think for me, one of the most interesting things that she kind of said was what the owner said, which was, like he doesn't want to spend money on marketing that like doesn't work, because then it's just like burning money in the parking lot. Right. And I think that's something that David kind of almost mentioned a little bit as well. It's like, like there's no reason to be spending money on things that I don't necessarily need, or like if I'm already doing well. And I think that's also a good, potential research question of sorts is like, when should I, be worried more about, like digital marketing, or when should I be more about traditional marketing, or like when do I even need digital marketing for my individual business? And it's like, do all businesses need some form of digital marketing? And I think that's something we're gonna be seeing more and more of in the future. And I think that's something that, Parrish obviously does very well. Parrish is a very well-known brewery with their Ghost in the Machine beer. And it's like, they really don't have a huge, like they don't do much paid advertising. She even said that they're only doing two, which aren't even really, like, they're not advertising within Instagram or Facebook. They're paying a company to kind of post about them, to talk about them, or give like kind of like a sponsorship of sorts. So, and like they don't really do any boost. They don't do anything like that. And they just kind of use their name and their quality of product to kind of shape their business, which is a really interesting concept within, digital marketing.
Yeah, I think you brought up some interesting points about the interview. The owner doesn't believe in using those strategies if he doesn't see a return on investment there. And Parrish, Carly mentioned that Parrish sells 100% of the beer they make, so they don't even have a large marketing budget. They usually partner with their distributors, which is pretty beneficial to them. And word of mouth and social media are their big marketing ventures that they do. They do like Instagram, and we've seen that before. I remember I see it because I like Parrish Brewery. They kind of advertise their tap room and stuff like that, but nothing substantial. Just kind of the tap room and what's going on over there in regard to that. She did mention merchandise, and that's a marketing expense as well, but it doesn't require as much of a strategy as social media would. It's kind of pretty simple, making merchandise and trying to sell it. And yeah, I thought that obviously the Ghost in the Machine, it was something very interesting to me. I do love Ghost in the Machine as well. And it did very well as a beer, as you mentioned. And Carly just basically kind of broke that down and how they were able to jump that trend, right? They hopped on that trend, which was like a hazy IPA. And in the South, there wasn't much of that. So this allowed for their consumers to trust them more and, kind of see them as, it kind of launched their brewery, of being like, oh man, like, make some good beers over here. And it's because they jumped a trend. They paid attention to what was going on. They paid attention to the opportunity and they went for it. That's what you got to do. That's therein lies your, the recipe for success is just paying attention to trends and, not shying away from, oh man, well, everybody's doing this. Like, what are people, what's going to be our, the perception of us or our reputation? No, like, enjoy those trends, ride them. It brings you, your business, a bunch of attention and possible business and stuff like that. And did you have anything to add? I kind of would like to hop into this question.
I mean, yeah, you can go right ahead. Next time
Yeah,
I talk,
so
I'll just say some more, but yeah, you're good.
her question is there's currently no single big time beer influencer. So how should we use influencers for our beer? I thought that was a really interesting question just because I never, that's something I never thought of either. Remember doing a project last semester on influencers and specifically how they help or don't help a business. Sometimes influencers are just noise and they don't help at all. Sometimes they really propel the business. Celebrities are a big way to do this. And that's the kind of idea I have for Parrish Brewery. Since it's a local brewery, my idea was to have just some local celebrities or some local musicians, maybe with New Orleans and its heritage and stuff like that. Or a variety of places, not just limited to New Orleans, across Louisiana. But that way, they would appear in their marketing campaigns, like social media, or if they were to run a commercial and stuff like that. That's the next best thing to an influencer. Probably even better, I think. Just because, yeah, like who's going to be, I don't think there ever will be a beer influencer, just because it's like, man, I think everybody is, right? Everybody, I'm a beer influencer.
Mm-hmm.
I like beer. I like talking about it and stuff. But I don't think anybody is going to so to speak, dominate that and be the face of that just because it's so broad. It's something that a lot of people enjoy, and I don't think you can really put a face on it. However, the utilization of like celebrities will basically, grab some attention. Plus, it helps your brand look better. Having like a celebrity back that or be, enjoy that product. It's kind of like, oh yeah, I like Tom Brady. Tom Brady drinks Paris. So that's a bad example, Tom Brady. I don't know why I went to Tom Brady, but local celebrities and musicians or stuff like that can greatly help the brand, I think. So
Yeah,
that's
no,
just
I definitely agree. And I think, looking at the Louisiana beer market, like it really is, there's a lot of breweries here, and like there's two in town right now that I know of. There's probably more than that, honestly, in Baton Rouge.
Mhm.
There's a bunch in New Orleans. There's a bunch in just the whole South Louisiana region.
Right.
And so I think it was like difficult for them, or at least I would think, to kind of like, be like that, differentiator between them. And I honestly think that the Ghost of the Machine spawned a lot of local breweries after they
Oh
saw
yeah.
how successful it had become. And it was almost, a trailblazer for Louisiana beers. Obviously Abita is as well. But like, like Ghost of the Machine is like nationally renowned. And she even mentions that there's, like part of their market is like this national beer snob of sorts that are trading beers from different states and are super into it, but they also have the person that's going to Rouse's to buy Cane Break over Miller Lite.
Mhm.
They have a few different markets that they can market to. And then like when it comes to the whole influencer situation, I was thinking the same thing of like, doing the like local influencers or going into the market that you want to get into. So if you want to get into beer snobs and another state or Mississippi, then you would try to find someone, one of those smaller beer influencers, and try to go through that. Or, you could do the whole celebrity route, or do, which might be a little more expensive, but the whole like product placement of like within like local movies and stuff like that. So let's say if like a movie, like a show like True Detective or something that's kind of, filmed in like around that area, because Louisiana does have a decent, film industry. You can kind of, place some, like talk to them about placing one of the main characters. It could be like Anthony Mackie or something like that, who's the local
Oh yeah.
actor, and have him drinking Ghost in the Machine, or something like that, to where like you can kind of be like, oh, like that's a Louisiana beer that's filmed in Louisiana, and it's, a Louisiana actor. So it's literally just, it'd be a way for people from all over the country to see a local beer and potentially add some, some increase in the branding of it. But I also didn't think about how there really isn't any big beer influencers. Well, there is like within the whiskey industry, there is like some like very big Instagram and Facebook accounts that have 500,000 or a million followers. Cause, like whiskey is a little more, I guess, like, there's just whiskey, like there's, bourbon and whiskey, stuff like that. But like with beer, there's like so many breweries. There's so
Right.
many, like each state almost has their own way of brewing beer. And it's like, it's kind of hard because also beer isn't nationally, distributed just like whiskey is. So like if you have a
Mhm.
good beer in Louisiana, it might not be sold in Maine, but if you have, Buffalo Trace whiskey, it's going to be sold, like throughout the whole country. So I mean, it's a little bit different of the markets. So I never really thought about, how difficult it was to find beer influencers. But I think if you can kind of jump into that local market of, using, our culture and our, industry of sorts, and having some people like Drew Brees, or having, Zion Williamson or something like that drinking, when he comes 21, when he's drinking Ghost in the Machine, stuff like that. So.
Right. I totally agree. And obviously, like great examples, I don't know how much it costs to do those things.
Mhm.
So that's why uh, like local celebrities, there's like levels to that. But I totally agree. Another great way that they could kind of jump on this heritage train, so to speak, is whenever things open up again and we're able to have it, Jazz Fest, setting up a tent at
Mhm.
Jazz Fest Parish Brewery, or trying to sponsor that event, hanging up banners and stuff with Parish Brewery, anything like that that kind of gets in, because I think as a brewery, especially in Louisiana, you tapping in to the locals and the heritage of Louisiana and New Orleans and the the spirit of Baton Rouge, that's huge. Because I mean, the example you gave with Anthony Mackie drinking Ghost Machine, like I felt pride from that example. Like I was
Mhm.
like, man, like that's awesome. That's an
Yeah.
awesome thing. So yeah, I think for Parrish, they definitely need to jump on those opportunities and try to market with that Louisiana heritage, and that would help them grow, I think, exponentially.
Yep. I definitely agree. And like, it's a great company, and like, it really helped boost the competition, I think, as well. I think companies like Urban South and all really started to step up their game whenever they saw how popular and how hard it was to get some of the Parrish products, such as Ghost in the Machine. So, I mean, I think overall within, all of these, I think we kind of touched on the importance of digital marketing, but also like, it's not perfect in every situation. Like, it's got to be done from business to business. And also, like, on top of that, which we didn't really mention, but like, like with Parrish, like, if they didn't have a good product, then like there'd be no reason to market their product that hard. But like they had, so that, like, all these businesses have great products. So like, that's like the first step I would say to any business, is like making sure that you have a marketable product.
Hmm.
And that's something
And
we
they
don't really
do.
talk about too much within marketing, because we're not the ones making the product. But like, in order to market, and like the want to market a product, you have to make sure that it is a good product. And I think that all these companies have that. And then also, it was really cool to kind of talk about the differences between the traditional and the, digital, with the billboards, the, guerrilla marketing that, David did to, really trying to go hard with the SEO, or trying to do more Facebook ads, or more, pay per clicks, and all that kind of, thing. So it was a very interesting project as a whole.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like I said before, there was like a variety of backgrounds here, and even going through it, like with you and this kind of podcast that we've had, this research podcast, uh, from the similarities between Ross and Jay to Nick's very unique predicament, and David's kind of creative side of things to Carly over at Parrish. I like the variety that we had here. I think we casted a very wide net, and I also think that to a degree, we gave some good feedback. I think we've had some great ideas here. Kind of outline the importance of writing trends, the importance of digital marketing, and basically being on top of this dynamic environment that marketing really presents. So yeah,
Yep, I agree. It was a pleasure, Avery, to
pleasure as always, Spencer.
do this with you. And I hope this all turned out all right. And it was a great time,
Terrific, terrific, perfect as always.
as always. Oh.